What if America's most undervalued asset isn't tech, real estate, or oil, but a pile of metal locked in a vault, still listed at 1973 prices? What if a single number, buried deep in a government ledger, could instantly shift how the world views the US economy and spark a new global gold rush? Today we're looking at the one move the US hasn't made in over 50 years, but could make with the stroke of a pen: revaluing its gold reserve. Why does it matter? Who controls the number? And what happens when reality catches up to the official books? You're watching Dawn Gilded, where we chase the metal, not the hype. The secret ledger no one talks about. The gold is spread across three highly secure vaults: Fort Knox in Kentucky, West Point Bullion Depository in New York, and Denver Mint in Colorado, are all overseen by the US Mint, which reports to the Treasury Department. Every month, the Treasury quietly publishes a document called the Status Report of the US Treasury on Gold. It lists the total ounces and the official value, still at $42.22 per ounce. No changes, no inflation adjustments, and no transparency. Why $42? And why it's never been moved? That number has history. In 1934, President Roosevelt revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 per ounce, devaluing the dollar and strengthening the federal balance sheet overnight. Then in 1973, following Nixon's closure of the gold window, the Treasury adjusted gold's book value to $42.22, a bureaucratic reset. That's the number still used today, 50 years later. And despite massive debt growth and monetary expansion, nobody has touched it. How other nations value their gold. Unlike the United States, most major economies revalue their gold to reflect reality. Countries like Germany, France, and Russia report their gold holdings at market value and update it annually or quarterly. The International Monetary Fund values gold using an SDR-based price that changes regularly. America still locked at $42. In a world of floating currencies and digital assets, the US is using an accounting method from the Cold War. Why? Because to revalue gold is to admit that fiat has failed, and that real value never disappeared. It was just ignored. What's really inside Fort Knox? Fort Knox reportedly holds 147 million ounces of gold. It's shrouded in mystery, no tours, no press access. Even most elected officials are denied entry. In 2012, after years of pressure, the US completed a multi-year internal gold inventory verification, the first since 1970s. All bars were counted and weighted across all Treasury vaults, including Fort Knox. But only random bars were assayed for purity, and no independent public audit was ever conducted. So while the gold is officially accounted for, the public is expected to trust, not verify. And the number, still $42. What a revaluation would actually do.
If you're the kind of person who doesn't trust the system, who sees the writing on the vault walls, I made something for you. The first official Dawn Gilded drop is live. These aren't your average shirts. They're a statement, a warning, and a nod to the ones stacking metal while the world burns paper. Links below. Limited supply. Because truth doesn't mass produce.
Let's say the Treasury updates the official gold value to $3,000 per ounce, in line with current markets. In one stroke, the reserve value jumps from $11 billion to $785 billion. No mining, no selling, just an internal recalculation. At $5,000 per ounce, the gold is worth $1.3 trillion, and at $10,000 an ounce, it's worth $2.6 trillion. That doesn't eliminate the $34 trillion national debt of the US, but it dramatically improves the government's balance sheet and sends a message to the world. Using gold as leverage. Again, this wouldn't be the first time gold was used strategically. In the 1970s, the US engaged in gold swaps and leases to establish global liquidity. The IMF regularly uses gold as a base asset for lending programs. If reevaluated, America's gold could be pledged in treasury auctions, anchored to the SDR contributions, or used to issue long-term asset-backed bonds. Revaluating gives gold financial teeth, without putting it back into circulation. How the IMF could be forced to adjust. The International Monetary Fund currently uses gold in its special drawing rights system, a global reserve asset made up of the dollar, euro, yuan, yen, and pound. Gold's role in that system is symbolic until it's revalued. If the US updates its gold reserve, the IMF may be forced to adjust quota contributions, voting power, and debt restructuring mechanics for developing nations. Revalued gold doesn't just affect US debt optics, it reshapes the balance of global economic powers. Why no one wants this conversion? So why hasn't anyone updated the number? Because revaluing gold undermines confidence in fiat. It says, we need real assets again. It questions the stability of the dollar, it risks triggering public interest in precious metals, and it removes the illusion that debt can be inflated away forever. So instead, we get silence. The ledger remains unchanged, and gold stays buried. Not just underground, but in policy. What the fallout could look like. If revaluation happens, the effects are instant. Physical gold demand explodes, gold ETFs and miners spike, silver follows, the dollar wobbles, not from collapse, but from recalibration. Central banks take note, smaller nations start buying, and the public suddenly realizes they're holding paper in a world returning to metal. We've done it before, twice. History repeats. In 1934, Roosevelt raised gold from $20.67 to $35, a 69% dollar devaluation. In 1973, Nixon's Treasury set the current $42.22 price. Each time, the purpose was the same: strengthen the balance sheet, buy time, and control the narrative. Not through spending cuts or tax hikes, but through revaluation. What they said about gold. In 1933, FDR said, "We may now restore that confidence by the knowledge that there is still a solid backing to our currency." And in 1966, Alan Greenspan warned, "In the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation." They knew what most have forgotten. Gold isn't speculation, it's the signal. What it means for you. If the number changes, even quietly, the entire system shifts. Gold becomes nearly impossible to find. Fiat loses a layer of trust, and those who held metal, not paper, come out ahead. You won't be notified, you won't be warned. You'll just wake up one day and the spreadsheet will say 3,000. The final breakdown. The US owns 261.5 million ounces of gold, still valued at $42.22 per ounce. At market price, $3,000 per ounce, it's worth nearly $785 billion. A revaluation would strengthen the treasury books. No printing, no tax. It's happened before, it can happen again. And when it does, everything tied to gold will move fast. Tell us this, would you sell or hold? If gold is revalued to $10,000 overnight, would you sell or hold? Would you escape the system or use it to build something sovereign? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's see who's here for the profit and who's here for the future. Subscribe to Don Gilded for weekly deep dives into gold, silver, collapse mechanics, and the wealth you were never meant to see. We don't chase the hype, we chase the metal. See you in the next one.